understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. Light a candle. So today's episode 43. What word are we doing today?
I don't know. We didn't introduce ourselves, though.
Oh, right. Should we start over?
No.
All right.
No. Who are you?
I'm Sam. I study church language and literacy.
And I'm Dillon. I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
Thank you. That's why it takes two. We got our candle lit.
It Takes Two. That's a song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Parent
I better
Travis
not
Wade.
start singing.
So, episode 43 is on the word prophet, which gives you the ick a little, no?
I'm not a huge fan.
Mm-hmm. It gets misunderstood, but
yeah, because
I am
of
a huge fan.
Because of the misunderstanding, I'm not a huge fan. It's not that I'm not a huge fan of, it's not that I'm not a huge fan of the prophets, because I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge fan of kind of maybe we'll touch on this a little, the modern kind
for sure,
of.
I'm going to touch on that, yeah. Look, like always, I've got my notes. I even got a little picture of a pyramid in today's notes.
Prophecy, like, I'm going to throw a name out here, like a John Hagee reading Blood Moons.
Right.
Not a big fan.
Yes. I also have a Post-it because I ran out of room, so I needed to extend my page a little bit. So let's talk about the word prophet. I'm not going to go into the Greek too much, except that pro means before, right? And the ending of the word prophet means one who declares. Let's just keep it simple, because I don't want this episode. I could talk for a long time about this episode.
So before one declares.
So it's one who declares before. Somebody who declares beforehand, right? So over time, this word prophet, also prophecy, but we'll talk about prophet, but same concept, right? Over time, this word prophet or prophecy has really picked up the meaning of fortune teller, right? But that wasn't the original whole story. So in the Hebrew Bible, I'm going to say this wrong. It's NIV apostrophe Navi.
Yeah,
I'm not real good at Hebrew, but Navi is the word in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament that often gets translated as prophet. Mm-hmm. That word, though, simply meant and means deliverer of divine messages. Right. That's it.
A messenger.
A messenger of a message from God, right? Not a...
Also, real quick, not in every case. Not in every case, but that word is also used throughout, not Navi, the Hebrew word, to talk about that same word, which just means messengers, is also used for angels.
Yes. Yeah, that's good.
So,
that's why I said it's often translated as prophet. That word is sometimes translated in different ways, but it's often that's the word in the Hebrew Bible that is most associated with what we in English end up seeing through translation processes. The end result is we see prophet. And that word Navi, again, it just means divine messenger, not fortune teller, not doomsday announcer, nothing like that. But it does have a lot to do with moral warnings about the present circumstances to prevent a certain future from occurring.
Correct.
So it has a lot to do with past, present, and future, especially like what is happening in the present and how if we don't get this under wraps, fix this, turn away, like go in a new direction, they warn about the future, which is why it has such a strong thing today in English about fortune telling in the future.
I do think, but here's something very interesting. I don't know if you feel the same way, real quick. The very people that, especially Christians, conservative, more fundamentalist, very much Pentecostal Christians, they tend to love prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
They love prophecy. They love foreseeing the future, telling the future in a way that God is telling us. They find weird passages taken out of context in the scriptures, and they try to warn people by telling them what is to not about cleaning themselves up now, but but what is to come. And they are the biggest group that is against people like fortune tellers.
Yes.
Fortune tellers, sorcerers, people doing crystal ball stuff, which almost, they wouldn't think this, but which almost, they're putting them on almost a similar playing field. They're almost paralleling them.
Yes, as somebody who wasn't raised in religion and gets to see Christianity through somewhat fresh eyes, it has always dumbfounded me whenever I realize the people who are really into like Revelation tells us that it's like a checklist of what's going to happen. It's a prophecy. And they are the people who are so against fortune telling
or witchcraft,
or all of that.
I'm not saying I'm for that stuff. I'm just saying they're almost putting it on the same level.
Right. It has always
saying
blown my mind.
One's bad and one's good.
However, a universal truth, I believe, is that the things that we are most against externally often speak to something internally. So whenever you are somebody who's really obsessed with end times and doomsday stuff, you're going to be very against, I don't want to say fortune telling, right? Because
So,
like it just speaks to a fear inside of us when we are very against or anti something else outside of us. Like I can see it in myself when I start to be really against things. There's fear creeping up.
Oh, sure.
Like, okay, what am I afraid of?
Right.
Where does that fear come from? Is it founded? Like, what's happening, right? So again, just this inside-outside matching stuff.
Right.
If you're a language nerd like me, this doesn't really matter to anybody, but it's interesting to me. This word prophet comes to our modern English. It comes through Middle Age English. Did I say Middle English?
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And I think speaks volumes.
Do you want to elaborate on that or no?
No, not right now.
Okay.
No, because we have a lot to talk about. So let's talk about what this word prophet means. So if you see on my notes, I have this little picture of a triangle, right? And Dillon knows where I'm going with this because I talk about it all the time. So you can think of the triangle as our society. If you're watching the video, you can see. So as our society, we have people at the bottom. They tend to live in poverty. They tend to be oppressed, right? People of color. In some ways, women, right? Women maybe aren't like totally at the bottom so much in our society now, but we used to be, and we're getting more rights, right? But, and then you think of people at the top, wealthy, white, often male, right? Have resources. Everybody knows what the social hierarchy is. When you are comfortable, and listen, I'm closer to the top than I am to the bottom, I would say. I have a lot of privilege in this life. I'm comfortable. If I so much as drip sweat or get a little bit hungry, my day is ruined, right? We can be blinded by power and blinded by comfort when we're at the top. That also means that we are not prophets. That also means that we are blinded to oppression, right? Prophets are either people at the bottom or people at the middle or the top who have aligned with people at the bottom, who through empathy and compassion can see life through the eyes of the oppressed and can use their power and their comfort. Do you know what I mean?
Of course, yep.
Prophecy, and we're going to talk about the Bible, but prophecy are like canaries in the coal mine, right? So if you don't know that metaphor, you probably do, but if you don't, I'm going to really beat a dead horse here. So canaries in the coal mine, whenever there were people working in coal mines, there was this, I'm going to really butcher this because the details, but essentially there was poison.
Keep going, I'm just looking something.
Sure. There was poison, and you don't want to send people down there because if they breathe it in, they would die. So what do? Canaries who are really sensitive to this, they would go down, and you would hear them chirping and making noises to warn people, like, don't come down here because it's bad, right? As they were dying, as they were suffering, really. And that's what prophets are like. They are typically people who are either oppressed at the bottom of that social hierarchy, or they are aligned with people at the bottom of the social hierarchy and kind of speaking as an ally for them, right? And oppression is a huge part of prophecy. There is no prophecy without oppression. It just doesn't exist, right? And without power structures. So these prophets, they are canaries in the coal mine. They're often the people who are like, hey, there's a problem, right? This setup, this social setup we have going on, this political setup, this religious setup, this all of it, there's a problem. They're canaries in the coal mine chirping away, saying that I'm suffering. But people at the top are blinded. They can't hear it. They're deafened by their own comfort and privilege and wealth and power. Do you know what I mean?
I definitely do. I was
We're
also
going to ground this with some examples soon, but
while you were thinking about this, I was looking up because I didn't put it in my notes, but I was thinking about when you were talking about prophets and what they are and what they're not, and I was thinking, oh, Paul speaks about this in Corinthians. I couldn't remember if it was 1st or 2nd Corinthians, but Paul speaks about different types of a variety of spiritual gifts, and I'm thinking about every time I install in the fall new council members at church, I always read this passage from 1 Corinthians, and it talks about prophecy. Here's the interesting thing about that when Paul speaks about prophecy being one of many. Right? It's not just prophecy. It's one of many things. There's a whole list of them. Prophecy is a specific gift that some people have, but not everyone has it. So as soon as someone goes around saying, "Well, I have a word, or I have a prophecy," well, that not everybody just gets that, and so. And Paul actually in 1 Corinthians, Paul even warns about that. He actually doesn't have too many kind things to say. He acknowledges that that spiritual gifts are important. He acknowledges that prophecy is important, but he kind of has a caveat with it, like almost like a warning, like really be careful because this can get out of hand. We definitely know that it can get out of hand here. Paul even knew that it could get out of hand, and he kind of alludes to that. Yeah. So that I always find that.
That really brings up a whole other. I'm really tired. So tired. I'm trying to focus. I'm so tired. It brings up this question of like, who gets to decide who a prophet is, right? Like, obviously, biblically, they're
well, sure, but there's some criteria.
But like Martin Luther King Jr., prophet.
The community.
Prophet, right.
The community.
Gets to decide.
Because it's interesting. I don't want to steal your thunder here.
Well, I have a list of some biblical examples.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, we're talking about these spiritual gifts that Paul's talking about. We're talking about wisdom. So people that are giving wisdom, wisdom and knowledge, both going together. Faith, one of kind of faith. Healing, miracles, prophecy. And distinguishing the spirits. That's a fun one. Tongues, speaking in tongues, which Paul really kind of talks poorly about. And then interpreting those tongues. Which he says, if you can't do it, then you shouldn't be speaking in tongues. But
we could do an episode on speaking in tongues.
We should do interpreting tongues.
But that won't be for a while because I've got to work out my own crap with that.
Yeah,
I would come to it with right now with a very critical view, and I've got to step back maybe next year a little bit.
Yeah, well, we could talk about tongues a different time.
I'd have to learn more about it before I speak on it.
I actually know quite a bit about it, but I'm not wanting to speak about it now.
Yeah. Okay, so now biblically we can go on and on and on. I'm going to give some major examples. So if you look at Amos chapter 2 verse 6, you got excited.
Good prophet.
Yes.
Really good prophet.
He is, and again, chapter 2 verse 6, feel free to go look it up, but he is speaking against exploitation of the poor. Like, I'm just going to go through a couple examples because I want everybody to really, like, we hear prophet, like, oh, prophecy is about the end of the world. It's about something bad. It's fortune telling. I'm going to say this a couple times this episode. I'm going to look at the camera. Prophets do not tell the future. They tell the truth.
That's really
Prophets do not tell the future. They tell the truth. I'm going to say it one more time. Prophets do not tell the future. They tell the truth. Prophecy is about warning that the way it's happening right now is a problem. And because people at the bottom who are suffering are canaries in the coal mine to tell us society this setup isn't working, it's broken, because they're the first ones that feel it, right? Let me be very clear. Eventually everybody will feel it. It will all come crumbling down. I do this thing, I've done it with your class. We've talked about this on an episode before, but I do this thing with my Sunday school students where I make a pyramid of sugar cubes, and then you put like colored water so they can see it. You put it in and you'll see that this pyramid of sugar cubes, it's the cubes at the bottom that dissolve first. They feel it first, they dissolve first, but eventually the whole pyramid crumbles, right? So if we don't pay attention to the suffering of those at the bottom, we will all eventually crumble into the water. It will all disintegrate, for better or worse. So
and Amos, so some people say Amos, some people say Amos, doesn't really matter.
What did I say?
Amos. I can't even remember, honestly.
I think I said it. Did I mispronounce?
I don't know.
Amos?
One.
Wait, Amos.
Amos. I say Amos, but Amos. The prophet Amos.
Do people say Amos?
Yeah, some people do.
I just said Amos.
Oh yeah, that doesn't matter.
Okay.
One of MLK's, one of Martin Luther King Jr.'s, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of his favorite prophets. He is the most quoted in many of his sermons, many of his speeches.
Yes, and I think it's important that we give him all of his titles, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., because a lot of people like to separate him from his religious convictions, and I think that does a disservice to his civil rights activism.
Yeah, I'm going to look at...
A lot of people who, and rightfully so, it's fine, but I know a lot of people who are...
I don't think that is
fine. A lot of people who are very against religion.
No.
I'm saying that's fine. It's okay. But a lot of people who are like, just wouldn't even go near it. They sure do like to quote the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but really pulling him out of context. Like, he was a pastor. He was speaking from religious conviction. He was a Christian prophet.
I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I'm going to look into the camera and say, so MLK is one of my favorite pastors, one of my favorite preachers. I love his work. It's excellent. And the interesting thing about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is that this has, I'm going to make a statement, but I'm going to do a little disclaimer. There is nothing wrong with secular humanist or secular humanism. I think it's actually a very beautiful tradition, a beautiful philosophy. But the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not a secular humanist. No. He was a Christian. He was a Baptist in particular.
He was a pastor.
He was a pastor, an ordained pastor.
And he came from generations of pastors.
And the Jesus story transformed him, and he felt that the Jesus story could also transform the world. And so he did it he did it for all people, regardless of their creed, but he did it because he was a follower of Jesus, because he was a Christian, which he wasn't some...
We like to do it with Mother Teresa too.
Yeah, this is not some a religious person fighting for justice.
Yeah.
And there is people who are that, and that is beautiful. But you shouldn't take the religious part away from people who are.
Yeah. If you got kids and you don't want them to hear some words, you can turn it off now. 1, 2, 3. But people who like to talk a lot of shit on Christianity, again, I get it.
Oh, I do too.
Talk shit on Christianity.
I do too.
There have been bad things.
Could be healthy.
But the people who talk bad about Christianity, but then willingly share on social media quotes from Mother Teresa and quotes from Martin Luther King, MLK, and all these people, it's like
Desmond Tutu. They do the same thing with Desmond Tutu.
They are religious figures.
They also do it with the Dalai Lama too. So the Dalai Lama Buddhist, but they kind of like
remove them from their context, and I think that's really dangerous. Like I've seen people who I know are like crazy intense atheists, and that can be beautiful, and I have nothing against that. But they'll wear shirts. I've seen an atheist wear a shirt with Mother Teresa where it's like, you spend so much time spewing hate about Christianity online, and then you're wearing a Mother Teresa shirt.
Who's a Roman Catholic nun, who was a Roman Catholic nun.
We're like pulling people out of the context is a problem. So anyway, Isaiah condemned rulers, and I have quotes here. This is from Isaiah chapter 10, verses 1 through 2. He condemned rulers who write oppressive statutes and turn aside the needy. Right? This is in the Bible.
Is this from the prophet Isaiah?
What did I say?
No, I just say the prophet Isaiah.
Isaiah.
Yeah, Isaiah. But
is that wrong? Am I saying all of these wrong in my
no.
Isaiah.
Isaiah is what most people say.
Okay.
But I was told in seminary it's the prophet Isaiah.
Isaiah. Oh,
It sounds. It sounds so.
I can do Amos. I actually do hear Amos more. Amos.
As long as you don't say.
Subtle.
Yeah.
Amos.
Or yeah.
Isaiah.
Yeah, Isaiah.
That's how most people say it?
Oh, that's how most people say it. But I always say it because one of my professors said the prophet Isaiah.
Okay, so anyway, he, in chapter 10, verses 1 through 2, he condemned rulers who write oppressive statutes, turn aside the needy, or rob the poor. Right? So again, we have this prophet who is condemning the powerful, right? And supporting and prophesying on behalf of the people at the bottom.
That's fairly damning, actually.
Right, yes. Yes, it is. Jeremiah, am I saying that? Any corrections?
No.
Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 3, he accused leaders. Once again, you see everybody punching up. And I really love that. So my favorite art form in the whole world is stand-up comedy. I just love, Dillon knows this. I love stand-up comedy. I love it for the pure enjoyment, but I also love it for the art of it, and I just think it's a wonderful art form. I take real issue when comedians punch down, right? Punch up.
Yeah.
It's not funny when you make, like, some comedians have gotten in trouble recently because they make fun of, like, women who have been abused, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, that doesn't really matter. Why does, like, who cares? Like, it's comedy. No. Good stand-up comedy, and Dillon knows this about me too. I occasionally read books about like the art or the science of humor. I don't know. I really like it.
Yeah.
Just like what makes good stand-up comedy. I would never want to perform stand-up comedy, but I'd write stand-up comedy.
Sure.
But punching up is what makes things funny. Punching up is appropriate. Punching down is not. So you have Jeremiah again accusing leaders of failing to defend the oppressed.
Yeah,
punching up. So you have these leaders, you have rulers, right? Well, like they just, these prophets are punching up on that pyramid that I was talking about.
Yeah, you. I know you can have your. I just want to.
I just have a few more.
Do you have any on the prophet Nehemiah?
No.
So the prophet Nehemiah, who's a minor prophet, but a very.
I did have him, but I had to shorten my list.
Sure. The prophet Nehemiah is a minor prophet in the Hebrew scriptures, but I actually really like Nehemiah, and I think it's the 8th chapter in the 8th or 7th verse. I forget what it is, but the prophet Nehemiah is talking about the people are using the law of Moses to oppress people, and they're using it in an oppressive way, and Nehemiah says to the community that he's speaking to, he says that you need to hear the law, but when you hear the law, it needs to be interpreted. It needs to be interpreted for the day, and it needs to be prophetically interpreted. And so
a verse for lawyers.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because you have the law, and the law can be a beautiful thing. And yet, but if the law is oppressing somebody, Nehemiah is saying, no, this needs to be interpreted for the people of the day, and in a prophetic way, which is going to uplift them so that they know what this old law means, and so they don't get. So
it makes me think
interpretation of prophecy, interpretation of law, and interpretation of understanding one's faith. I was thinking about that passage from Nehemiah.
It makes me think of Dan McClellan, who, if you're on any social media, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, follow him. But he's a Bible scholar, and he says this thing, I'm going to paraphrase, but he essentially says his job on social media, because he's a public, I don't even want to call him a theologian, he's a public Bible scholar.
He's a Bible scholar.
And his whole thing is he's calling out misinformation about the Bible on social media, because people post things with like no grounding whatsoever. And he calls them out and says, no, that's actually inaccurate. Here's what the scholarship says. Here's what we know to be true. And he'll even say sometimes, like, we don't know, but here's like 3 possibilities that we are aware of right now. He just presents what the most, what the scholarly consensus is really. And he says all the time, I will always try to remove my own bias from what I'm presenting you. I'm just trying to tell you what the scholarship is. But if there is ever bias, 1, let me know. And 2, one bias that I will be fine with is when all else is equal, I will give the benefit of the doubt to the least powerful. So if all else is equal, I'm not supporting the view that helps the powerful. I'm supporting the view that helps the oppressed.
Right.
Like that's a bias that he's made peace with. He's like, that is what I will do, and that's what it makes me think of.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I also think like some people, we've talked about this on other episodes, but some people will point to one passage and they'll say, well, this is what it says. This is what it's saying. And I always go back to that small little passage from Nehemiah. Mm-hmm. And I would say, yeah, things need to be interpreted. Mm-hmm. Over time, that might have meant one thing a long time ago. And it might still have that historicity to it in its roots. But what does it mean for the people now? And what, in a prophetic way, can this mean so that people can be transformed, so that in the future, not future telling, but in the future, we don't have to we don't have to continue on the hamster wheel.
Yeah. I study language, specifically church language and culture. So let's take a little scenic back road for a moment. I feel like a lot of these episodes are just me talking about what, like, I just can't stand this and I can't stand that, but it's all right.
It's our podcast.
Something that so people who don't understand, when people are like, but the Bible says this and this and this. Okay, let's just slow down a minute. It's such an immature relationship to language, and I have a couple examples. Number 1, our daughter Tabitha, who's 4 now, when she was 2, she got her first haircut. It was just a trim, and her uncle, Dillon's brother, Uncle Seth, cut her hair. She got a hair trim with scissors. At home, we didn't have a pizza cutter, like the roller thing. We didn't have one. It had broke. So when we would do Pizza Fridays, we would use scissors and cut the pizza.
Which is a great way to cut pizza, by the way.
Yes. And she liked to pretend with her fingers to cut hair after she got her first haircut. So I remember she would take my hair and she would pretend to cut it, and she said, I'm going to cut you like pizza. Now, out of context, this sounds scary for a 2-year-old to be saying, I'm going to cut you like pizza. That sounds terrifying.
Right.
But to know that by you, she means hair, and we cut pizza with scissors, and she's cutting hair with, like, the connection of
There's
it all.
a lot of contextual.
There's a lot of contextual stuff going on there, and she was 2, so she didn't get that there were differences. I have a couple other examples, but they're escaping me now. But my point is, there's a word that our kids are not allowed to say shut up just because they overuse it. When they learned it, they heard it somewhere.
Well, it could be rude.
It can be rude, right? And they like to spew it to each other as sisters. Today, you said you were tired after working. You said something about like, oh, I'm shutting down. Do you remember that? And Sophia, who's now 3, Sophia said, you said shut down. You said shut down. Like it's a bad word, right? And again, she hears shut. She knows that up and down are in the same language family, like this. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And she knows shut up is bad, so she thinks shut down must be bad too. Same with hate. They're not allowed to say hate. And we have recently, Jill and I use the word hate more than we realize, so we're trying to differentiate for them. You're not allowed to say I hate you or you hate people when you're mad.
Or a group or something.
Right. But you're allowed to say like, like if you drop something, I hate when that happens. Like you can say that. So again, they're 3 and 4 and they're already being able to pick up on some of these contextual things. But then you have grown-ass women, grown-ass men, grown-ass women, grown-ass people who can't understand that language is contextual, and how one person is going to understand it is going to be, just take Romeo and Juliet for heaven's sake. How one person reads that is going to be totally different.
But here's
and the Bible is not different.
You go. Okay, so here's what some of our viewing.
Some people think that it's God.
Some people,
yes.
But when we talk about that, that makes a difference for some people. And here's a couple of examples here, and that we could tie this into the prophecy thing. people would say, well, let me say this. Some people would say, well, yes, but Dillon and Samantha, Romeo and Juliet is not the Bible. That is not sacred scripture. So those things, although they could be looked at somewhat the same, they're not the same thing. That's what somebody would say.
I would agree. They're not the same.
And I would say, no, they're not the same.
Yes, a sacred text is
I would agree.
Literature,
I would
sure.
totally agree with that. However, we see other scriptures like that. We see, some people, we see the Hindu Vedas or the Torah or the Quran. There's other sacred texts from other world religions, and those are also looked at differently.
Right.
Yet, here's the thing.
And we can hold space for that and still understand there's interpretation happening.
Correct. You can look at sacred texts differently, while at the same time having, I'm going to use them, while at the same time have a socio-historical, critical method of looking at them. Mm-hmm. What that means is you are looking at the text, although it's different, it's a sacred text. And I don't mean that in disrespect, in quotes. You're looking at that, and you're looking at it in context. Mm-hmm. You're looking at it for textual context. What was the author meaning at that time? That's one way. What might that mean for us today? That's another thing. What was the culture behind it? What was the history behind it? In what, so I have this book in front of me, it's called The Hebrew Prophets. What did the Hebrew people think?
Over a little bit.
What did the Hebrew people think about the prophets? If this was the Greek, something, what did these are different cultures, these are different religions. That matters when studying a sacred text.
So with the word prophecy, we read the word prophet and think like, oh, telling the future, because that's the meaning it has picked up over time whenever it has entered our Middle English into modern English. But in Hebrew, that Navi word that we were talking about, it was just divine message.
Right.
It wasn't, I shouldn't say just, but a huge part of it was a divine message.
Right.
Not only or strictly or even necessarily about the future.
And some people will say, oh, well, that just takes it all away. Well, for some people it may, and that's a shame. Because once you start to read the Bible, the Hebrew script, the Old Testament, and the New Testament, once you start to read it in a contextual way and not a literal fundamental way, it becomes so much more beautiful.
And this is not a church literacy issue. This is a literacy issue. Teaching college students, who I love very much, and I don't want to complain about them too much. I love 18, 19, 20-year-olds. But even whenever I was in college, it was similar. Students don't know what to do with metaphor.
No.
They don't know what to do with the fact that language changes meanings. And like there are words in the dictionary today that were not in the dictionary 10 years ago, and there are words that were in the dictionary 10 years ago that do not exist in the dictionary today.
Well, they don't know how to look at allegory. They have no idea.
Right. Literacy in general has become so, and let's just talk about church literacy. I need to go to church once and understand. When that's not at all what it is, it's actually a hole that you can fall down forever.
Right.
As evident by this podcast that we could go on. Like we probably will go forever and ever. So let's go back to, I did Jeremiah, I did Elijah. No, I didn't do Elijah.
It all went off the rails with Nehemiah. Sorry.
Yes.
We went into interpretation, and that always takes you in a.
Well, it's important for the word prophet because that word has really evolved.
Well, right, and I would like to point back to Nehemiah, not to get on the bunny trail, but to say this: that when the prophet Nehemiah is talking about interpreting the law and giving a present day prophecy, the whole idea of a prophet is interpreting what is going on in present day and warning people against ills that are upsetting them.
You use
and
the word
also,
warning, and that's good. A
right,
prophet is a
warning or a challenging one to not warning or challenging one not to do that. Right. But a prophet can also be one of bringing one to a moment of whether it's an individual or a community to a place of transformation so that they can get to restoration.
Right. Yes. So Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 21, he confronted King Ahab
Excellent.
Thought you were going to correct me. Ahab and Queen Jezebel for exploiting those without power. Again, every prophet, you'll see it. Like I don't know of a single prophet where it doesn't come up. They are calling out those in power to support those who are oppressed. They're calling out those who are blinded at the top of the pyramid to support those who are suffering at the bottom, right? And then a huge one is obviously King David, the Davidic prophecy, which brings the Messiah, the Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, right? So
Ezekiel is another one. I don't know if you know. Ezekiel.
Go ahead, and then I'll do King David.
Ezekiel's interesting. He sees that the Hebrew people, that the Israelites they're struggling to find their way, and there's a lot of death, there's a lot of destruction, and it always comes up at Easter time, usually the reading from Ezekiel, because it's about Ezekiel and God speaking to him and breathing on the dry bones that are in the midst of these people, these dry bones. Everything is dried up. Doesn't seem like there's any life. And it really needs a restoration. It really needs a resurrection. And that resurrection story is that God works through Ezekiel to be able to bring a new hope to the Israelite people and to breathe life into dry bones to kind of resurrect. It's a story of people are in a place of death and destruction, and they really need someone to speak into them. They need a prophet. They need a messenger from God. So.
I want to talk about King David and the Davidic prophecy, but prophets, we think of prophets as like they have to be elevated to like this certain fame, right? Like we talk about Martin Luther King, we talk about all these biblical prophets. That's not true though. There can be prophets just in your local community. Like if you go to church, you probably have a couple prophetic voices. Here's the thing about prophets. They have to be skilled communicators. Prophets aren't the people who are just complaining all the time and calling it wisdom. Prophets are skilled communicators who know how to speak in a way that people could listen, right? They know their community, right? Like Moses was a prophet. Sometimes they're angry. I'm not saying there's not anger there, right? I would almost think there has to be some anger sometimes if you're a prophet who's like, a prophet essentially is just somebody who takes the community by their shoulders and says, wake up, open your eyes. Can't you see that people are suffering and we have the power to fix it? Like, what are you doing? But a prophet is a communicator overall. They have to figure out. It doesn't mean they're always efficient or effective, but it does mean it's not just that person in the corner who's like, oh, this isn't working and this is a problem. No. Right. Don't mistake complaining and negativity for prophecy. Those are different things. Yeah. In fact, prophets, more than anything, are hopeful. Yeah, they're hopeful. The people in the space who have a sound, ethical thing about them. Yeah. And they can call something out and they can speak truth to power, but there's hope in what they're saying. Yeah, there's hope in what they're saying. I'm thinking about another minor prophet. You don't hear about him too much, but the prophet Joel. And I always think every Ash Wednesday for the first day of Lent, the first reading on Ash Wednesday is from the prophet Joel. And the prophet Joel calls the community to repentance. They've lost their way, and they are like leaves blowing in the wind. And he calls them to repentance of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And he talks about everyone from the oldest to the youngest, calling oneself and repent. When we talk about repentance, we just talked about this isn't like some beating yourself over the head and God hates you type of a thing. It's talking about turning oneself around and walking more in line to God. And the prophet Joel, I always think, it always makes sense to read the prophet Joel on Ash Wednesday as the first day of Lent, because it calls one to repentance so that as one journeys on and they meet Easter, they can be hopeful, they can be joyous, they can meet
resurrection. They can mean restoration.
Yeah, prophecy has a lot to do with restoration too. So that's connected to the King David, the Davidic prophecy, right? So essentially, very long story short, there was this king named David, and I don't want to glorify or romance him too much.
No, he had some
real issues. He abused in many ways, right? However, under his rule, there was a relatively peaceful, there was prosperity, right? People, the story goes, flourished under his rule because he really centered the Moses prophecy, right? And then eventually along came Solomon after King David was gone, and Solomon really did not center the Moses prophecy, really didn't care. He built expensive things with slave labor, even though they were just enslaved themselves, right? He really just flipped it all on its head. With my own political bend, I would argue it's happening right now in Christianity.
Sure.
Christians are fighting for power. That is never what we were called to do. But we're fighting for, I say we, although it's not my brand of Christianity, but I am under the umbrella, so I have to take some sort of responsibility there, or ownership rather, but we've lost the plot again. We've done it again. We've flipped it on its head, and we've got to listen to the prophets that are rising up. Like people who are saying, we're suffering here, like the canaries in the coal mine, who are saying, we're suffering, right? I think of Black Lives Matter, and the Christians who are like, no, who cares? No, we were made for this. We come from prophetic wisdom. Our book is full of prophecies. We have trained for this. We're supposed to be people who listen to the canaries and then sing out with them. That's what we're supposed to be. But what are we doing? We're ignoring them. Even worse, we're saying, get out of here. No, I just don't even care. No, that's not even an issue. Like, no, those are prophets. Those are prophetic voices rising up saying there is suffering in this system. And if we keep going this way, it's going to get worse and we're all going to crumble.
Yeah. I also think about the current refugee and immigrant and migrant crisis.
For sure.
I think across the whole world, and I think those who are migrants and immigrants and refugees, if you're in the Hebrew or the Christian tradition, there should be no argument as to how you should be treating the immigrant, the migrant, and the refugee. Jesus is very clear about it. The Hebrew prophets who we're speaking about are extremely clear about it. There's no really mincing words there. I even think of what's going on. I know it's a tough conversation to tackle, but I think of what's going on in the Middle East. Between Palestine and Israel, and especially in the Gaza Strip, and children that are starving. This is unjust. And
well, if anybody knows who Miss Rachel is, Dillon and I were talking about this recently. In some ways, she could be seen as a prophetic voice. She's
absolutely
crying out with those suffering, and she's even come out and said, because she's a big deal now, people want to work with her, and she has come out officially on social media and said, if you are a creator of any kind and you have not publicly spoken out about starving children in Gaza, I will not work with you. I won't do it. And that's, I believe, prophet energy. It's this real sound like, no, this is wrong. I'm going to say it in every way that I can until people hear. I'm going to be the canary singing to warn you that, like, it's poison. There's poison, and the poison will kill us all. It just so happens that I see it, and I'm trying to let everyone else see it, and you have the opportunity to open your eyes. And if not, we're all going down.
I think of another...
Well, I just want to... I only have one more thing to say, and then we can talk more about what you want to say. But... again, prophets don't tell the future, they tell the truth. And the reason we have connected that to the future is because prophets will often say, this is what could happen, this is what will happen if we keep on this path. They're not telling the future. They're not giving us check boxes of like, this is what is going to happen. They're saying, this is going to be our future if we don't change our present moment, or if we don't account for the past, right? So, actually, I didn't really finish the King David thing. Solomon ruined everything, and then people wanted a ruler like King David. who was the anointed one. Messiah means anointed one. So this is where the messianic prophecy comes from, the Davidic prophecy, right? So again, people were suffering, and the suffering people were crying out, saying the way Solomon did it is a problem. I know I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, but the point I really want to make is people don't like prophets. How do we know that? Jeremiah was imprisoned. Zechariah was murdered. Jesus, also a prophet, by the way, was killed on the cross. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. assassinated, right? People don't like prophets. So they're not just these hopeful people who are really wise in your community. If there's somebody who's saying uncomfortable things in your community, whether it's at work, whether it's in your family, sometimes children can be prophets. They can be the canary in the coal mine, screaming, saying something's wrong in my parents' marriage, something's wrong in my home, something's wrong with this setup in my place in it. They can be the prophet, right? I mean, this is a really minor thing, but there was a time, this was like a month ago, that you and I were bickering a little bit back and forth, as a married couple does. We were in the kitchen. I don't even know what. It was just like this minor back and forth. And our child comes in between us. No fighting, no fighting. Because I'm shameless. Another example is like 2 weeks ago, I was changing Tabitha, our 4-year-old, on, again, I'm just trying to really ground this prophecy thing. It can come in a lot of forms of just people saying something's wrong, this isn't right, and it's up to us, the people who have power, to say, I believe you, and I'm going to change whatever I can. So Sophia's 3, and she's pretty much potty trained, but she still needs help sometimes, and it's a lot. And Tabitha is 4, and I was getting her pajamas out, and I had her underwear out, and I turned to grab it so I could put it on her, and it's gone. So I couldn't find her underwear. So I'm trying to find it. Sophie's on the toilet, and she's yelling for me. Dillon was at a meeting. It was late at night, and he was at a meeting. So it was just me. And Sophia is yelling because she's on the potty, and she needs help. She needs help. She needs help. And got new underwear. I still don't know where that underwear went. It might have went in the hamper. I don't know. I mean, this was weeks ago. I got new underwear. I'm putting it on Tabitha. Sophie's like, mommy, and I yell, Sophia, just wait. And Tabitha, in her canary in the coal mine way, very calmly, she goes, Mommy, when you yell like that, nobody listens to you. You can just say, Sophie, just wait, please. That's prophetic.
Out of the mouth of a child.
That's prophetic, right? It's this like calling out of like, there's harm being done here. So I had to say, yes, you're right. I should have just said that. I'm sorry for yelling. I had to apologize to Sophie, right? That's the power that, I mean, I know that's really small. I'm not calling my child a prophet, but I am saying.
No, I know what you're saying.
Prophecy can come in a lot of forms.
Sure.
It's not just this grandiose biblical thing. It's a really grounded thing, right? It's not a skill of mine because I don't have the tact for that. But I know I can think of a couple of people right now. It's like, yeah, they can do it. Yeah. But it also means they're not always the most liked by people who don't want to hear it. Because sometimes people who are blinded, they want to stay blind because it's very uncomfortable to have to actually work to combat these systems that harm.
My mother says a phrase, not quite often, but often enough, is sometimes people have to be convicted. Not convicted like in a crime, but convicted in they need to think about something in a different way or a new way or something like that. And sometimes our words or our songs or whatever it might be help kind of agitate or convict one to really think about something that they haven't thought about before. And sometimes I think the prophetic voice or the prophet is one that is both challenging and warning, but also and convicting. They kind of convict us to think about a new way to bring about hope and joy. Here's something that
we're at 48 minutes.
48 minutes. This is the last thing I had to say. A lot of times when I think about the prophets or the prophetic voice these days, is I always think about people speaking about those on the margins of society. Yes. People. But even more so, the scientific community has been for the past 40, 50 years, much more so in the past 25 years, been talking about the climate crisis and kind of getting people to wake up to
communities can be prophets.
Yeah, to wake up to what is going on with our climate and how we are polluting our land and our air and our water, and trying to get us more in touch with God's creation and to clean that up. I remember when we were kids in the early 90s, you would hear about the glaciers melting and the polar bears, and everybody said, "Who gives?" I don't usually curse on this podcast, but people say, "Who gives a shit about polar bears?" Right? Mm-hmm. Because it was polar bears. Mm-hmm. I think that is a major problem in that. Okay, so you don't care about animal life. You don't care. You don't care about that. It's kind of a thing. But as soon as we started talking about human issues, oh, well, I guess, my friend, who's living on the coast has just lost their, sea levels are rising because of the heat, and there's all these things. So as soon as it becomes a human problem, people start to kind of wake up to it. But this is a whole earth, this isn't good language, but this is a whole earth problem. Mm-hmm. It's about the environment, the plants and the animals and the people and the cosmos and the stars. It's about all of us working in unison together as God intended it, yes. I would argue. And that is about cleaning up our shit mm-hmm. to stop polluting the land, the water, and the air. And yes. that it shouldn't be a liberal or conservative thing to talk about clean water, clean air, and clean land. Yeah. That shouldn't be a partisan issue. Yes. Caring for the environment.
Yes.
So when I see pastors, like people in my own vocation, when I see pastors, when I see professors and teachers, when I see scientists, when I see especially young people marching in climate marches and climate crisis marches and really advocating for that, that is such a prophetic voice. Yes. And caring for the earth mm-hmm. Has always been a part of religion, has always been a part of people's personal faith.
Yes.
And
I'm somebody who loves to nuance everything. I really struggle with black and white thinking for the most part. But to nuance that, I read something, I can't remember who, it might have been Walter Brueggemann, I can't remember who said it. I'm paraphrasing, but they said, in the realm of prophecy, there is no space for over-intellectualization, mm-hmm. and there is no space for nuance, mm-hmm. right? Because some things that deserve a prophetic voice to rise up they are black and white. And so I think of people who are like, I don't know, climate change, it's like kind of a hoax. I don't want any more data, I don't care. How about we just clean up the trash at our local park, and how about we try to use less plastic? Right. Can't do any harm. Can we just, some things are just we don't need to nuance it. Can we just stop the debate? So I just like that. In the world of prophecy, nuance is not needed. It's not needed. In fact, it's not welcome here.
Right.
We don't need to argue it. We don't need to defend it. It is. People are suffering. The earth is suffering. Like, can you just open your eyes? Like, are you kidding me? You think that our however many decades now of having cars mm-hmm. hasn't taken its toll? Are you kidding me? You need data to support that? Right. Get out of here. Are you kidding me? You think that women aren't suffering when they were all on Valium in the 50s because they had to stay at home and raise their kids? You think motherhood makes women happy across the board? Get out of here with that crap. I don't even have tolerance for it anymore. Right? Enough women prophets have risen up. You think black people aren't suffering? Are you kidding? I don't even have the time for that anymore. Richard Rohr says that. He's towards the end of his life, but I kind of want to channel his energy. Like, he says all the time, like, I don't even have time for that debate anymore. Please, like, just stop it.
The
When
same
people
thing with
say they are suffering, believe them.
and immigrants and
Believe-
refugees,
right.
LGBT people.
Right.
If
when
you
my
can't
daughter
see
says,
that,
"Mommy, you don't have to yell like that," believe her.
right?
Believe her, and say, "Yeah, that's actually not everything's in my power to change, but that is." So
You know,
I'll do it.
I'll close on this because we want to keep this tight.
I have a book recommendation.
Okay, so my last thing, kind of once again in the prophetic world of things, the world of the prophets. Something most recently in the beginning of June, our church had a rededication service of our space, and some of the guests that came from Germany. There was a bishop from Germany, and he brought with him some of his office staff. And one of the first things that they said when they came to our space, which they loved, they thought it was very beautiful, reminded them of many churches back in Germany, but they were looking for places to hike. Do you remember that? They were looking for places to hike, and I talked about my personal love of our state parks and things of that nature. And the German staff, the German delegation, as well as the German bishop, said very kindly, but kind of with a somewhat of a concern or a disdain, they said, "It's so dirty here.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much trash here." And that has really had me thinking, since June, because it is indeed. I mean, I walk to the office every week. The church office it's not far from our house, and I see the plight.
Trash
I see just it really is. I've been to Germany twice. I'm sure that there's places in Germany that are dirty, but for the most part, Europe has really kind of done a decent job, especially Western Europe, of eradicating pollution and trash and other things. And I really share that with them. I really share that prophetic voice of saying, I'll just close with this, because I believe what they said is true, and that's what their truth telling is. Clean up your shit.
Mm-hmm.
Care for the earth that God has given us.
Yeah.
And clean it up.
Yeah. So 2 book recommendations I have. The first one, if you're interested in prophecy at all, Walter Brueggemann's book, The Prophetic Imagination, is hands down
really good.
It's like the book on prophecy. It's easy to read. He's such a brilliant. Well, he died recently.
He died recently. Just last month.
He was a brilliant author. It's a short book. It was one of those books that just changes you. It's so good. Also, Richard Rohr's new book, The Tears of Things, Prophetic Wisdom for an Age of Outrage. He talks a lot about a lot of the prophets and what they have to say.
And Richard Rohr and Walter Brueggemann are great authors.
Yeah. Awesome. Stay curious.
Stay curious.
To understand